So I will say that it was surprising when we first got SCS contract in April. It was a little bit of a perfect storm. It was around the time when the service director had resigned, and so there was a few things going with that. The first iteration of the agreement was what I refer to as a $22,000 phone call. It was a $22,000 contract that the mayor presented to council for 1 to perhaps 2 video calls off-site. Ms. Demers, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing her name wrong, was Demers. Thank you, Demers. Was good enough to participate through Zoom at a springtime service and utilities committee meeting shortly after that, where we were able to talk to her about consideration of expanding her presence and her due diligence from a phone call or two to actually coming on site, coming to University Heights for the full 4 days of rubbish collection. At that time, it was brought back to council, and Councilman Cooney made the suggestion that we table it to until we hire a new service director, because perhaps that person would be able to plan it on his or her own with that type of experience and knowledge in service department management, and we decided to do that. I've since had the honor to meet with Mr. Pennington, and while Mr. Pennington has a career, a good career as an engineer with municipal experience, this is the first time as a service director. And I asked if he had an opportunity to read through the SCS contract and asked if he would prefer to try it on his own or have that assistance. And he said the SCS contract would be helpful. And I think that's wonderful. But after, after considering everything, I thought about it for about a week, and I sent the mayor and copied council, the law director, maybe Mr. Kennedy, just my thoughts about this contract. I mentioned before that I've had decades of experience with planning and implementing successful new projects. And in order to do that, from my experience, whatever it is, rubbish collection, programs for the elderly, all kinds of things, I found that the best way to do that is to look at the entire operation, because efficiencies and effectiveness, cost efficiencies and other can only really be understood when the whole operation is looked at. We collect rubbish Monday through Thursday mornings. Well, what's going on in the afternoon? What's going on Fridays? How could that be more efficiently and effectively implemented? Does it make sense maybe to have recycling collection on Fridays, or maybe every other week, or maybe some afternoons? I don't know. We have staffing issues. We have equipment, perhaps, things that we'll have to adapt, and to look at it through the entire holistic, or whatever word you want to use, program may make the most sense. Mr. Pennington is getting out there, I understand he's out with the guys, and he's really understanding, wrapping his arms around the operations. We really need to move forward with this, though. Like the mayor said, this is already 6 months, going on 7 months since this has been official. So what I would like to ask, and I don't know how, forgive me if I'm, please correct me to use the correct words, but I don't know if it's to table this. It doesn't, I think we need to go forward with SCS, but at this point, I would like to see Ms. Demers come on site for a full week. I'd like her to see the entire operations so that she can work together with Mr. Pennington and the administration to give us the best, most effective, most efficient program that's possible in the spirit of doing what our residents want and doing what our earth needs. I thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanders. Several things. We've already had that study, and we paid for it 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We've had the study with regard to updating our method of collection and changing solid waste collection in the city, and we disregarded the bottom line recommendation. Several other items. One, the scope of this item is not to review the entire processes of the service department of implementing ordinance 2023-05 in particular. There's been no ask nor any need to request a quote for a review of the entire service department's services. And we've already had the study from GT Environmental, twice since 2008 with regard to recommendations of changes to our collection. We do have on the city website the survey results from RRS, and I don't have to paraphrase this. I can read this. Conclusion from table 11 is that 5 out of 10 residents preferred a curbside method, such as automated, semi-automated, or manual collection. 4 out of 10 residents preferred the current system with no changes. 1 out of 10 residents preferred backdoor rubbish collection with changes to recycling, either manual or semi-automated curbside collection. The method that's proposed in 2023-05 was not surveyed. The method that was proposed in 2023-05 was not studied. This particular proposal gives us the opportunity now to study this particular item, which was not studied by GT, was not surveyed in either of the 2 surveys, but was nevertheless put together, put forth, and then passed into ordinance form. The city of University Heights has the lowest rate of recycling in this county among suburban cities that pick up recyclables. The only cities that have lower rates, suburban cities, are East Cleveland and Richmond Heights, neither of which has a recycling pickup program. Both of those cities only have drop-off recycling. The city does offer drop-off recycling here at behind City Hall in the service yard. I would note that just today we discovered over the holiday weekend that entire container for recyclables was contaminated with construction debris, and everything that was in there had to be discarded. This is why unmonitored drop-off recycling has such limits, because here, and as in many places, when a container is left unmonitored, it can be abused, as our container was just over this weekend. When it comes to recycling, a total of 84% of our community believes that recycling is either very important or important. It was 65% saying very important, 19% saying important, but less than that 84% actually actively engages in recycling. We continue to have staffing issues in the city service department. We did recently have 2 applicants. One ended up not passing the background check. The other one, after we offered him the position, and after he saw our operations, saw that it was better to stay put where he was than to work in our department. We are not competitive, not because we're not a great place to work, and not because we don't offer a reasonable salary or wage, but because our methods are so outdated and are so physically strenuous that it is not a desirable way to have to pick up and do the work in our community. You can go to Cleveland Heights and drive a truck and operate a joystick and pick up recyclables. But here in University Heights, we have people come out and, you know, we're clearing about 1,000 homes a day. There's 2 routes. There's 2 people on each route. So, you know, we're talking about a buggy driver having to hoist hands over his head and put them into the back of a Kubota 250 times for 250 households. So it's not just 250 times, it's for each can or each bag they have to put in the back. That is an incredible amount of work. We have a laborer last year who left on disability because we broke him. We broke him with this work. It is awful what happened to him. And he no longer is here, and he's on disability as a result of that. Finally, you know, this is a system that simply needs to be modernized. You know, we hear from new residents all the time that they cannot believe that we do not have, you know, modern systems for this. Just over the weekend, I addressed yet another resident who requested cans for recycling and trash pickup, and I had to inform them we don't do that here. That we don't have that. We don't have a can that we can give you. That is standard in communities where curbside automated is done. It is a leading issue brought up on new resident surveys, and an analysis of the data collected by Baldwin Wallace shows that among residents who have experienced both curbside automated pickup and backyard pickup, they prefer the curbside automated pickup. People who generally, you know, favor backyard pickup favor because they're familiar with it, they know it, it's what they've used, it's what they've done. But in most of the rest of the county and community and country, it is done another way, and people who are experienced in that find that to be a high level of service. And I truly believe that when we hit a point where we actually make the change, and we will have to make a change sooner or later, because the costs of this are exorbitant. There are other things that the community wants to be able to offer this, that the county or the city wants to be able to offer this community again. We want to resume senior services. We want to have year-round recreation. We want to be able to build new facilities. And until we get control of costs in the service department on the solid waste pickup, we're not going to be able to do those things. People sometimes say, I pay so much in taxes, at least I have this thing. That's right, you have this thing instead of any of these other things, because this is what it costs. And we need to fix those things. And, you know, today, when we passed the budget amendment that Mr. Kennedy prepared, we are out of money for fuel. And what do we spend our fuel on primarily? Diesel for Kubotas. You know, we ran out of money in the budget this year on fuel because we burned through it like we do doing what we do. Thank you.
Mayor.
Yes. Who would like to go next? I'll go with Ms. Watson.
All right. I think people of this city have heard so much about garbage that when you talk to them, they are tired of hearing about it. Bluntly put. Actually, I think Councilwoman Sachs's idea to actually have the entire service department and all of its operations looked at might be a very good idea, because we will find out if it is cheaper to outsource, continuing to outsource sewer work as we do now, versus attempting to purchase equipment and use man hours to do that work. A large portion of the savings from 2019 study depended upon eliminating 4 positions. You have said, no, we can't eliminate those positions, we'll just move them and have them do other things. But we very validly need to find out if that is as efficient as you wish the service department to be. Number 2, I looked at houses in Cleveland Heights. I chose not to live in Cleveland Heights. I can appreciate that you have fondness for Cleveland Heights and how Cleveland Heights does things. However, you also talk about the uniqueness of University Heights, but then proceed to tell us that we all should be like Cleveland Heights. And I think we need to get real clear where we live. Number 3, I was glad to hear you even mention in a positive manner Baldwin Wallace and their ability to do surveys. You spent time delegating Dr. Sutton verbally. You are on record doing that. Anybody can run the video to see that meeting. That was appalling. You have denied, in most cases, that there even was a second survey because it didn't produce the results that you wanted. The second survey that was done, because it was all electronic, eliminated a large group of people from being able to respond. You did get responses from everybody who could go online and answer that survey. However, if you want, and I'm sorry, apparently I'm disturbing you, Mayor, since you're busy texting. Thank you. Or scrolling and reading something else, I don't know. But at any rate, I hate to bore you. I really hate to bore you. If you are serious, here's the kicker. You talk about sustainability. I teach it. Do you want to know what a real kicker is? Now studies have begun to show that what we gain towards climate control by recycling is marginal. It's at the edges. It's not a huge return. Yes, we should recycle. We need to get rid of plastic. Heck, if we were back to the old days of actually doing deposits in glass bottles, but the Ohio legislature doesn't want us to do that either. So we're going to have to find ways to do things that can be compromising. We have debated the backyard versus curbside pickup for years. If you were so dedicated to this, why didn't you put it on the ballot? Why didn't you go out and do a ballot? Instead of playing with surveys, spending a lot of time talking about it, because that would have resulted once and for all. To be blunt, when the survey was done that council approved, I really thought it was going to come back for curbside, which it did not. All that said is right now the taxpayers of the city, at least a large portion of them, still do not want to let go of an amenity called backyard. We have a pool. That's an amenity a lot of people don't use. Should we get rid of that? That would make it efficient. How much money do we pay per year for the pool? Have we begun to even plan the replacement of the pool? No, we haven't. There's a tremendous amount of things we should be focusing on outside of garbage. Now, I don't know if this SCS can do it. They were supposed to come in for 4 days. If council wants to approve the contract, they can, or not. But I don't think we need to spend another hour talking about garbage again tonight. I don't think there's anything that hasn't been said at this point that somebody can come up with that's new.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Weiser. Mr. Brown.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I hate that we're still talking about trash 4 years later, and as I talk to neighbors and going door to door, this is on everyone's mind right now. What I've been hearing is people don't want to lose their amenity, and we are so close right now. We are really close with Ordinance 2305 to get us to where we need to be. Backyard pickup, the loose recycling, It's something we actually agree with you on. We want to do loose recycling. We feel it's going to be more environmentally friendly, we will save cost. We agree on it. That's what ordinance 23-05 accomplishes. And two of my colleagues did not vote for that, and that's okay, I respect that. But I don't think we're far off. So the concern I have is when you bring in a company to do a review for $28,000, but your rhetoric supports a different outcome, such as curbside collection, then I worry that we're not doing this in good faith. Why should the taxpayer pay $28,000 for a study that you are not in support of? You are not in support of the 23-05. You've been very clear about that. I do want to move forward with this. I'd like to see what systems we can do to improve and to put together a plan for our department. Now, my colleague, Ms. Sachs, mentioned she'd like to have them here for a week. I support that. Actually, their proposal supports that. As it states in here, as requested by the City Council, we will observe existing trash and recycling collection operations for 4 days, focusing on neighborhoods with larger families and higher waste quantities. Impressions on how the collection system could be more efficient will be solicited from collection staff during this time. So they have every intention, at least according to their proposal, to do that. So I do support that. And one other thing, actually two other things. The first thing is I want to talk about your math real quick. There were 2 surveys. In the first survey, the percentages came out as follows. Maintain existing collection from 32-gallon containers located by the back of the house and garage. That came in at 62%. And curbside pickup from 96-gallon trash and 64-gallon recycling containers provided by the city came in at 35%. That is the information provided in the study. There was a second study commission. They had 6 options. You mentioned that 50% of the results came back wanting curbside automated. Well, that's not true. Option F is the only option in here that has automated curbside as an option, in which 34% of the respondents chose that particular option. So I just want to correct your math here, and I can share this graphic with you. It's in the report, but I'm happy to share it if you don't have the most recent information. But out of these 6 options, 3 of these options actually have current backdoor rubbish collection methods. So when you review all of the options, you add up all the ones that have backyard, it is more than 50% wanting backyard, and 34% wanting automated curbside. And the last thing I want to mention is, as I've been going through the neighborhoods, talking to residents, and the one thing on their mind, and I hope I'm not distracting you as well.
I'm getting the survey. That you
Okay, and I can
so thank you.
text it.
No, I got my own phone. Thank you very much.
What the residents didn't want to lose was the benefit that they received from the city. It's not that they just get trash picked up at their home, but they get it in their backyard. I talk to people who travel for work, so they're not home every single day of the week, or they're snowbirds and they go back and forth during the winter, but there's always been that benefit of having the trash picked up for you even when you were not home. And I have equated that to a benefit you receive in your own job. Imagine, if you will, your boss decided to take away your paid time off. You received this benefit for a number of years. You got paid time off, and then and only 34% want this change, and they just take that benefit away. That's what we're talking about here in terms of switching. But we don't need to talk about that because that's all resolved. We resolved that with 2305. It's become law. You've supported that by reaching out to SCS Consultants. They're going to come out and give us a review on how we can improve our collection method using backyard and loose recycling. So I'd like to see what they have to say. I do support this, and That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Mr. Rock. I just want to say very quickly that the numbers that I read, about 5 out of 10, supporting a change to automated or semi-automated or, manual collection curbside, something I read right out of the RRS survey.
Right.
This is not, you're telling me I've read something wrong. I read it verbatim. And it's on the city website. Anybody can look at it. It's under the surveys tab on the city website under service department. So I stand by my reading, plain reading of what's written on the page there. It speaks.
I look forward to you sharing that.
It's right on the city website. Thank you. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to bring us back onto focus with the agenda item we have here tonight. SCS Engineer and Consulting, they are an environmental company. They were contracted to review the solid waste aspects of our service department. I think that we're getting away from the scope of what they propose and possibly what their capabilities are by expanding it to the entire scope of the service department. I would recommend that if we do want to move forward with this, that we look at it as it's stated on the agenda this evening.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mrs. Sams.
Thank you. A couple of things. I find it interesting that the mayor keeps quoting the outcome of the IRS survey when the one option that had been discussed and approved in committee meeting and ordinance was not included as an option. And so how can you even compare when that wasn't even put there? But you misunderstand. I am not suggesting that the entire service department be analyzed and assessed. I am proposing that to see where recycling, where rubbish collection is part of that, what SCS is being commissioned to do, where it can fit in to a work week as effectively and efficiently as possible to see what can be done. So that, I want to just be clear about that. Also, had that option not deliberately, back to the backyard use recycling, had it not deliberately been omitted and not considered through the RRS survey, we would not be having to spend any more money. So that's an outcome of a decision, a deliberate decision by the mayor and the solid waste district and RRS to not even consider that which had been discussed and ordained. And just to put it, when you talk about amenities, PTO, whatever, what I would suggest is, yes, some people do use the pool. It's wonderful that you use it. But everyone, every household would have to make 104 trips a year from their side door or garage or wherever back of the house to the curb. 52 weeks a year taking the trash down to the curb, 52 times for 52 weeks bringing it back. In all weathers, where streets are blocked and access from the trucks can't even be made, and housing stock is dense. So that's really, to visualize that is what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's worth pointing out that neither survey, either the one written by RRS or the one written by the City Council and distributed by the CIC, surveyed on the method that is set forth in Ordinance 2023-05. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Mr. Cooney.
my concern is we're going to be spending nearly $40,000 without changing our method of pickup. It is costly, it is labor intensive, it is inefficient, it is outdated, and quite frankly, we are surrounded by communities that have gone to curbside pickup, that have taken advantage of the efficiencies and improved working conditions. And I appreciate Councilwoman Sachs for the work that she's put in to try to improve the recycling rate. But at the end of the day, it is an extremely physically demanding job. In a labor market that's tight, and with no end in sight, it'd be very difficult to continue to maintain the staffing levels needed. Mr. McCorney, the previous service director, the current assistant service director, and the current staff publicly stated early in the year to move to curbside pickup. And as the holder of the purse strings for the city, it is a very inefficient use of funds. I do not support this ordinance. I appreciate the work Councilwoman Sachs put into it. I know she does it with her heart, she does it with 100%. I just know eventually this city will go to curbside pickup, and I prefer to be part of that process versus be mired in the current one.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Mr. Pennington, I just want to make sure I have this right. We currently have 4 part-time positions vacant in the service department and 3 full-time positions vacant.
That is correct.
In the service department.
That is correct.
Thank you. Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you. What Mr. Cooney, Councilman Cooney has said is not really based in reality, with all due respect. I presented a budget analysis of 5 different scenarios of, with the various methods of curbside collection versus backyard versus loose versus bag. And again, there was negligible difference in the cost between those 5 scenarios, with the exception of service department reduction. As far as this being work that is being portrayed as undesirable, the few times that I have spoken with and interacted with the service department, they are people who take immense pride in what they do, and it is commendable. There's other back-breaking work. There's home health aides. I've talked about that. We have to lift people throughout their day. There are all kinds of other professions that lift. When we look at our neighbors who have backyard collection, Shaker Heights, Pepper Pike, they do not have the same staffing vacancies we have. I don't think that can be placed entirely on the work. Perhaps there are other things that could incentivize people to want to work for our city in this area. I've not heard or seen anything posted about hiring, referrals, bonuses, all kinds of other incentives that is mainstay these days in a variety of labor-intensive professions. So I'm just going to say that that's not what I found through my due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sachs. Mrs. Weiss.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to reiterate, and then I would like to make a motion because I think this conversation has gone long enough. Mrs. Sachs did present a very robust financial analysis of different ways of pickup. The only way that the city saved money was a reduction in workforce. Mr. Cooney even made a suggestion about attrition. I actually said in that meeting, give us a plan, Mayor, because as was stated beforehand, that's an administrative type of decision, not a council decision. Give us a plan. What does this look like 10 years from now? If we do attrition as opposed to reducing the workforce right now. That has never, ever come up in any type of discussion. And I think everybody here would be willing to listen to that. At this point, I would like to make a motion to approve 2023-49.
Okay, we have a motion to, is this on emergency? Motion to approve 2023-49, a motion on to approve on emergency by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Rock. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes,
Ms. Weiser?
I have a major objection to the line in this contract that reads, we will focus for 4 days, we will focusing on neighborhoods with larger families and higher waste quantities. Quite honestly, that is one section of the city. It is a section of the city that probably is less in support, or that the issues are less in support of retaining the service we have versus going to curbside. And it ignores the other side of the city where there are other legitimate reasons why people have argued to retain backyard. If we're gonna do this, it would be nice to do it fairly. And I think being fair is more appropriate than doing something to get an answer you want. If you do it fairly on both sides and you get the answer you want, then there is peace in the household. But if you do it fairly and things come up where you see what you might need to deal with, then we can make better decisions. So in view of that line in this contract, I'm sorry, I will vote against it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Weiser. I would just want to provide clarification, because I know that you've joined the council since the committee meeting on this. That line and that provision was added at the request of the Service and Utilities Committee. So that is councilman direction that was provided to SCS engineers to put that in. So that's why that's there. Thank you. Mrs. Sachs.
Thank you. Councilwoman Weiser and Mayor Brennan, I believe what that is, it references that the service routes, collection routes, have not been reviewed for 20 years, since 2004. And what it means is to incorporate into the assessment to assess the service routes and if they are as efficient as possible. So that's the intention. That should be what it's stating. So I don't know if that clarifies for you.
That's not the way it reads.
So can that be amended for the wording to be more clear?
I think that would have to be negotiated with SCS engineers.
Can it be done before the next council meeting?
Perhaps, I can't speak for that at this point.
But that's what came out of the Service and Utilities Committee. You might prefer not to, for that to be misinterpreted. It was pretty clear.
So what page are we looking at here in the agreement? And what would be your proposed change?
That was on page 2. And it was under the paragraph that's titled Observe Trash Recycling and Collection Operations. It's towards the bottom, second to the last paragraph.
Okay.
And I believe it starts in the second, it's the second sentence, the first and second sentence.
All right, I see where it says that. I don't see anywhere in this contract, in this proposed, scope. And
I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mrs. Sachs, but if you believe that new routes was a deliverable, that's not a deliverable in this agreement. They may be making observations and then, as it says here, factor those into a plan for collecting loose recyclables. But there is not a deliverable here for proposing, specifically for proposing new routes or rewriting the routes.
To put it into context, if I may,
Yes.
the discussion went like this. It was pointed out that routes had not been reassessed since 2004. Ms. Demmer said, oh, well, I just assumed, she used the word assumed, that it wasn't necessary because the economic development and footprint of the city has not changed significantly, and therefore the rubbish collection also has not changed, to which we had a discussion. Well, true, the economic footprint has not changed, but the housing and the residential family sizes throughout the city and the number of trash cans and such has changed. So that was the context of the discussion. And as a result, that came through, that perhaps it's time to reassess the routes for more efficiency, if that would be a factor.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I can see how that can be done subservient to the overall, scope of the work, which is to help us develop a plan to implement 2023-05. Now, that said, Ms. Marshall's been waiting patiently, so Ms. Marshall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mayor Brennan and Director Clinton, I was just wondering if that particular sentence that was brought up by Councilmember Weiser, do you all know which streets or neighborhoods that they are planning to observe? Because that might solve the fact that this sentence is not directed or, focused on a specific area. This just might be the words that they were using, but they may have intentions going throughout University High.
Yes, I can answer that. Okay. And that is that my impression, and I think Stacy Demers' impression as well, was that observing trash and recycling operations for 4 days represented observing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday routes. So even if we operate under an assumption that Monday's route has more larger families, we're looking at routes throughout the city.
That's not saying that.
Well, it's saying operations for 4 days, and again, going back to the committee discussion, the discussion was being able to observe routes on every day of the week that we collect trash. Every day is practically trash day in University Heights. We have 4 days of collection, and then on the 5th day, we collect some more. Special pickups, the everything that didn't get collected earlier in the week because if we're behind on brush because we're understaffed, et cetera, et cetera.
Mayor, comments are critical. You know that. We will observe trash and recycling collection operations for 4 days, focusing on neighborhoods with larger families and higher waste quantities. If all they do under this contract is focus on those neighborhoods, they will have fulfilled this contract. And you're the lawyer, you're the contract guy, you know they could do that. And my point is, because it's there, it does eliminate other areas of the city from consideration, potentially. And I don't think we should open the door to that. Because look, we have spent 4 years talking about trash. If we're gonna get to this, be clear, so that nobody can come back and go, you didn't pay attention to my area. Why would we want to open that can of worms again? You gotta be tired of talking about trash too.
I'm mostly tired of it done. So yeah, I mean, I get your point, Ms. Weiser. It says 4 days, it doesn't specify which 4. I don't believe it was the intention that they come and observe 4 Mondays.
Then would somebody accept a friendly amendment to delete that and note all areas of the city? The 4 days that they will see all areas and not just focus on one area?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't be amenable to that, but I can't speak for them and they're not here to speak. You know, this is language that has been, you know, this is at least the third iteration of this letter. This was added in the second iteration. That was before the council back in June when it was tabled then. This is the first time this has been brought up. Granted, I know you were on the council then, so you weren't here to provide this observation. I understood that by what was meant by operations for 4 days is that they were going to observe routes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 4 days in a row. I mean, if we want to talk about seeing every residence, don't forget there's an A and a B route every day. So if you literally want them to ride all 8 routes, then they gotta come here for 8 days to ride all 8 routes. That wasn't contemplated, it wasn't proposed, it wasn't asked for, it wasn't included here. I have personally ridden part of Monday's route to see, you know, for myself, some of the volume that's on Monday's route. I've also observed other routes. I think there are some differences, but, you know, I did it purely from, you know, my point of view as, you know, chief executive of the city. Not as a consultant, and but only to see that there are, you know, seemingly some differences with regard to volume. Yes, yes. This is what.
2 things. Mr. McConville, can I retract my motion? Because I have to be...
You can retract your motion, yes.
Okay. First, I would like to retract my motion. I would like to table this and ask the mayor to go back to the company and ask them to delete focusing on neighborhoods of larger families and higher waste quantities. There are a number of people that are going to be interviewed per this contract, and I think it is also very clear from our conversation that they realize that there's a certain neighborhood that has higher waste. So I think if you just delete that line, I think that will take care of everything. If there's anyone else that feels that would not take care of it, let me know.
Okay. When I go back then and ask that this line be deleted, is there also an appetite that we ask or a desire that we ask and have them specify that they're to collect, or that they're supposed to, that they would observe existing trash and recycling operations for 4 days, representing the 4 different days of the week we perform this service. Thus, we are observing on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays, and thus hitting all sections of the city.
Mayor, I would think that would be good. That way, all areas of the city are covered. Nobody can complain, no resident can complain that they were not included. And this is an amenity the residents pay for. They should have a right to speak to it. Usually cities deliver services that residents demand and are willing to pay for it. So this is something that I see that if we're going to do it, be fair with it. And instead of debating it, you know, just be fair. And I think it's perfectly appropriate to bring in this firm to look at how we can implement that. And if we can implement it, good. If we can't, at least we'll get a sense of where next steps may need to go.
Okay, thank you, Ms. West.
And I'll retract my second.
Okay, thank you. Floor is open.
So there's a motion to table. Are you making a motion to table?
Is there any, just to make sure I'm understanding, is there any reason why council would consider voting on a motion to amend the contract language, and then if that motion passes, then voting on the ordinance, and as amended to the vendor for them to decide whether they'll accept it. If they do, you have a contract. If they don't, come back for another discussion.
I think that would save a lot of time.
If council
We're now we're into this conversation.
council's inclined to do that, my suggestion would be that sentence simply be, as requested by the city council, we will observe existing trash and recycling collection operations for 4 consecutive days, period. Is there a motion to that effect?
Is there a motion yet?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Sacks, second by Mr. Rock.
I'll second.
Okay, very good, second by Mr. Rock. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Mrs. Thomas, we call the roll on the motion to amend.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Nay.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Okay, motion carries and it's amended, so that section would then read, as requested by the city council, we will observe existing trash and recycling collection operations for 4 consecutive days. Next sentence, next phrase is deleted and then resumes with impressions on how the collection system can be more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so provided this is passed this evening, we will ask SCS if they'll agree to that amendment, and if they do, then that's our position to execute the contract.
So procedurally, you've approved an amendment to the contract. Now, at this point, you have an ordinance before you with a contract, and you would need a motion to adopt the ordinance on emergency.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the ordinance on emergency?
So moved.
Motion to adopt the motion on, or the ordinance on emergency by Mrs. Weiss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Marshall. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. If there's no discussion, we will take 2 votes. The first is on suspension of the rules.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Nay.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
And then on the main motion.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Nay.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Okay, very good. Motion carries. Ordinance passes. I would contact Stacy Demers and ask that the SES agree to the change. Provided they do, I will execute the contract. Next item is item M, a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing legal proceedings, personnel, and real estate matters. The administration has nothing to bring to council at this time. Referencing back Mr. McConville's report, we do anticipate a motion for executive session next time with regard to University Square and update on the litigation there. So, I'll plan on that. We now turn to the reports of standing committees and the taking of action thereon. Building and Housing, Lynn Weiser.
There's no report, just an announcement. There will be a building and housing meeting at 6 p.m. on the 18th. An agenda will be forthcoming. We will be looking at the safe build contract for one of the agenda items.
18th of
September. In 2 weeks, the next council meeting. Will be before the next council.
6.
You
said 6?
Yeah, 6.
Thank you. And when did you say the agenda item was?
Pardon?
I think you said an agenda item about safe build.
One of the agenda items will be the safe build contract. Will be in discussion, nothing formal.
Are you requesting a representative for safe build?
At that point, no, let's review it, and then we'll get questions, we'll make things more efficient.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm sorry, are you done? I didn't want to cut you off.
I'm done.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Next is community outreach. Our chairperson is Brian King.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Economic Development Chairperson John.
Yes, Mayor, I spoke with Ms. Drucker regarding the zoning from ZoneCo, and they will be ready for another meeting sometime in the fall. So I'll be working with administration to secure a date, location, time for our committee to meet to discuss step 2 of the zoning changes.
Very good, thank you. Finance Chairperson Michelle Owens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There's a meeting at 6 o'clock next Tuesday.
Finance. Okay, thank you. Recreation Chairperson Chris Good.
No report, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Safety Chairperson Teresa Murray.
I have nothing to do.
Okay, thank you. And then Service Utilities Chairperson Sherry Sachs.
No report.
Okay, thank you. Committee of the Whole, Vice Mayor Michelle Owens.
Yes, thank you. There's a committee of the whole meeting on September 19th at 6 p.m.
We have an agenda yet for that?
Board of Elections is going to be coming to speak on ranked choice voting.
Oh. Thank you. All right, next item is item 10, reports of special committees and the taking of action thereon. Are there any reports? Seeing none, 11 is unfinished and miscellaneous business. Does anybody have any? Mr. Kennedy?
I'd like to wish Kelly a happy birthday in 2 hours.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Daddy said Kelly.
I'm sorry we could not stretch out the meeting long enough to be here with you for your birthday.
She's obviously
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Happy birthday. All right, there's no other unfinished or miscellaneous business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion by Ms. Weiser, is there a second? Second by Mr. King. Mrs. Thomas, will call the roll.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mrs. Sacks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooney?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Rock?
Aye.
Ms. Marshall?
Aye.
Ms. Weiser?
Aye.
Your motion carries. Happy 29th birthday.